the appeal hearing of Amber Jared Massey regarding classification of dog as potentially dangerous. And I'm going to turn it over to our county attorney.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman, and I appreciate being here with y'all tonight. Certainly hitting the ground running, so looking forward to this. As the Chairman indicated, we are here today for an appeal hearing under the Animal Control Ordinance, and just briefly for the Commissioners to provide them some information on the process. Upon appeal, at a hearing, an owner shall be given an opportunity to testify and present evidence. In addition, the board shall receive at the hearing such other evidence and hear such other testimony as reasonably necessary to make a determination either to sustain, modify, or overrule the animal control officer's classification of the animal. And here, as the Chairman indicated, we are dealing with the classification of a potentially dangerous dog. And under the county's ordinances, the definition of a potentially dangerous dog means any dog with a known propensity, tendency, or disposition to attack unprovoked, to cause injury, or to otherwise threaten persons or other domestic animals without provocation, or any dog that, when unprovoked, 1, inflicts bites on a human being or other domestic animal upon public or private property, or 2, chases or approaches a human being upon the sidewalk or the street, sidewalk, or any public grounds in a vicious or terrorizing manner and in an apparent attitude of attack. So that's the definition that y'all are considering here tonight at this hearing. And so at this time, I would ask, Ms. Donaldson, I'd ask if you could come up first. We'll swear you in and ask some questions. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, thank you.
Good evening. Y'all should have a packet in front of you. I received the complaint on 5/5/20 that basically Caitlin and Chris Yarbrough lives at 345 Gateway Drive, was walking down the street. Now, granted, their street is one way in, one way out. They were walking like they do any other time in the neighborhood, and a potentially dangerous dog come off the property from 107 Gateway Drive, and Chris was walking with a stroller, pushing his 8-month-old baby, and Caitlin was walking next to her son, which is a little bit older, on a scooter. At that time, a black dog, possibly lab mix, come off the property and bit Mr. Yarbrough on his side. And the owner of the dog stated that, he come out, and he was in the garage, come out and actually got the dog and took it back inside, not knowing that it had bit. At that time, after we received the complaint, I did pull up other complaints on this particular black dog by the name of Ox. I wasn't aware of it at that time, that it had other complaints, but looking back, Clyde Jeter had been over there on 2-3 for 2 different complaints done by Miss Moore and Miss Dizemore about the dog aggressively coming out onto the roadway and in an aggressive manner. And so at that time, I talked to Officer Clyde Jeter, and we determined that the dog, because it had been numerous times coming out off the property and then actually did bite a person, that we declared the dog potentially dangerous. I have multiple, evidence to say that this dog is aggressive. I know that Clyde did have an experience with the dog, and I would like for him to come up and talk to y'all in regards to the interaction that he had.
You raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Basically, February the 3rd, 2020, I received a call, and I went out to the residence where the owner lives and owns this dog. When I pulled into the driveway, the dog was out in the yard. As I pulled up, the dog come out to my truck and was real aggressive, coming toward the truck, snarling, snapping, hair standing up, and I was like, well, I don't think I'm getting out this time. So I was waiting to see if anybody was going to come to the door. Nobody came to the door right away. So as I looked around, there was a lady walking with a child up the street. And then I knew I had to get out. So I jumped out of the truck as the dog saw them and was moving toward them. And I grabbed my catch pole and I went down toward where the dog was. And the owner of the dog, female owner of the dog, she came out and got the dog by the collar, led him back into the house, put a lead on him, and then brought him back outside and walked down toward where the people were, where the child and the mother was. And so I kind of walked down around that way, and the dog, it's like his demeanor just completely changed while the owner was there. Had him on lead. Sometimes that has a lot to do with it. If you got the dog on lead, you're the owner of the dog, they'll become a gentleman. So this lady, she was trying to introduce the dog to the lady and the child. And I was a little hesitant, you know, I was like, well, man, we might want to back off a little bit and just, you know, let this kind of calm down some. So she brought the dog over to where I was at, and the dog smelled me, and it kind of walked around me. It's kind of like curious, I guess you'd say. But he still wasn't real friendly. He was just kind of like, he didn't know what was going on, you know. And, but when I first pulled up, if I'd have got out of that truck, I would have, in my years of doing this, I would have gotten bit. I saw it coming. And when I saw that lady, I knew I was probably fixing to get bit if there wasn't anybody at home. And she just happened to come out and get her dog before I had the chance to get to him.
Okay. Anything else?
I do know that in Officer Clyde Jeter's experience and my experience, we have quite a bit of experience behind us, me 10 years, him over 20 years. We do think that any dog that is on the property and being very territorial can bite going off the property. And that is one of the things that, you know, we think that the dog being potentially dangerous and multiple times going after people and then finally biting somebody, we need to put this to a stop and declare this dog potentially dangerous.
Okay, at this time, anybody on the board have any questions?
Yeah, I've got one question, just out of curiosity. The one complaint was for my Gateway Drive, and then the other complaint, the address is Brookside Drive. How far apart are those two addresses? Do you have any idea?
So Gateway is right here and Brookstone Drive is right here, so it actually comes out to that drive.
Okay.
I have a question. Mr. Yarborough, who was bitten by the dog, did he have to seek medical
He
attention?
did. He did. And we do have documentation of that, as well as we do have documentation of the dog being turned on his vaccines. But the dog ultimately had to be quarantined for the 10-day period.
He was quarantined at his home or at what animal control?
No, not at animal control, at this home. We have Sandy Wilson, who is our rabies control agent, and she normally handles bite cases unless it becomes something that you know, it's multiple times or we have multiple complaints. So she will handle that.
Any other questions from the board? Hearing none, are the Masseys here?
Yeah.
Hey, so you'll have an opportunity to provide your own testimony and evidence, but first want to give you an opportunity if you have any questions for the animal control officers at this time.
I don't know if it's particularly to them. The whole thing has been, like, we were contacted by Sandy the day after about the bite, and we were told that we would be contacted within 3 days and she would do a home visit within 10, that he had to be quarantined, that she would follow up. And I emailed Animal Control, I copied them numerous times, and we were never contacted again about the home visit. And then I reached out several times, and I have documentation of the text and the phone calls and the emails.
Okay. Well, and that's something that you can talk about during your presentation,
Yeah.
but I didn't know if you had any questions specific to the testimony that they've provided.
As for the statement that, I know how Mr. Jeter felt, but as for knowing he was gonna bite him, I mean, I'm with him all the time. I mean, we've had people come into the neighborhood, the FedEx, UPS, post office, and they get out of the car and they've never.
Okay, but again, I'm not hearing a question, though. I apologize. Do you have a question?
No, it's just maybe related to what
Okay.
gets said. So no, I don't really have any questions.
Okay, thank you. And thank y'all, I appreciate it. Now, is any of the complainants here the Yarbroughs? Would y'all like to come up, please?
Yes.
And I'll go ahead and swear y'all in both at the same time. Y'all both could raise your right hand.
Sir.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Sir.
Thank you. You may proceed.
I have printouts, if that's okay with you.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. This just goes to give y'all just kind of the full picture of, of what's taken place.
I need two of the county individuals.
Okay. Just to give you an idea of how it all began. So you can see we tried to, from the beginning, take care of this in a very neighborly way. This was actually our first time. We've lived in the neighborhood for 8 years. I know the Masseys had lived there for many years, but this was our first time meeting them, and so we tried to really take it in a neighborly way and not immediately file anything official. And so you can see that I had reached out. She texted me, Miss Massey Amber had texted me explaining that Ox is intimidated towards strangers. He's very territorial. This had come in response to my being concerned back in October with my son and I, who's 6, and we have a baby, had gone out on walks, and the dog had come off of their property to the street repeatedly and had come at us barking. And so it was stated that he was territorial, intimidated towards strangers, so he didn't know us. You know, she had said, hey, let's have him get to know your children, he'll get more comfortable. That sounded fine. We had actually gone out a few more times. The dog still was coming out. Then back in February, as Mr. Clyde had mentioned, that was a morning that, when he said about the lady and the child walking down the street, that was myself and my children. And she had come to the end of her property with the dog on the leash after he had already come out at us, trying to kind of familiarize the dog with my child also. My child with the dog. And just to put it out there, we have dogs in the family. We have family members who have big, large dogs. My child is not afraid of dogs. That's something he's comfortable with. But this dog is different because of just the bark, the hair standing on the back of his head, or his back. You can see back in April, I was out with a friend and her 2 small children, and then myself and my 2 small children. And while we were on that walk, it says in the text, he came out running to the road, coming up to us, showing his teeth, the hair on the back of him standing up. It's very upsetting to my child. Every time we go, I'm trying to reassure him, hey buddy, it's fine. Like, she knows that we're concerned about it. Like, she's reassuring me like it's going to be taken care of. On page 5, you can see that she had mentioned that they had a fence system, but it wasn't working properly. So I'm telling my son, hey, we're gonna go. She's got a fence working. It's good. We're good. We go again. We have another issue. The fence isn't working. You can see shortly after on the 16th, now she's asking us to let her know when we're going for a walk. So I'm having to then notify a neighbor, hey, we're wanting to go out for a walk. Can you make sure your fence is working? Can you make sure your dog's put in the house? Things like that. We tried to do that. We did that one time. Then again in May, that's when the situation where we were walking down the street, my husband's pushing the stroller. I'm with my son who's 6, and he's on his scooter. We were told, hey, it's the scooter that's kind of triggering him. But then it was, hey, he's territorial. So, it's a moving target of what's setting the dog off. So we're on the walk on the 4th, I'm sorry. And that's when my husband was bit.
So, yeah, I was pushing our stroller with our 8-month-old. We were on the street, right out in front of their house, and I started hearing the dog and the bark, and he came onto the street. I had moved a few feet in front of my wife and my 6-year-old pushing the stroller, and I didn't make any eye contact with the dog. I knew, sometimes that can also be seen as a sign of aggression to look and maybe make some kind of movement might be taken by an animal as a sign of aggression. So I made sure that I was trying not to make eye contact with him, trying to just kind of slowly keep moving, that might kind of de-escalate the situation. But the dog was circling. My son and I knew he's allergic to dogs, for one. So that was the first thought that came to mind is, he's allergic. And we just found this out a month before this walk. So then as the dog is circling and barking, and I can notice the hair on the back of his head standing up, that I moved from being concerned with the allergic reaction to being concerned with what was going to happen to my son. So he's making his way around us. I had to step in front of the stroller because I didn't know, what might happen at that point. He's still barking. I can hear my 6-year-old from about 5 or 6 feet away. He is screaming in tears, screaming, please don't bite the baby. At this point, I am off the street onto the neighbor across the street's property, and the dog lunges up on the back side right here on my right side, right at my hip, and I felt him get me, and it was at that point that I think that Mr. Massey had made it out there, and after he had jumped me, he eventually grabbed him and pulled him away. I try not to show anything. I knew it would really upset my son even worse to see. But when we got home, because we immediately turned back and went home, and when we got to the house, I showed my wife my t-shirt and undershirt had been ripped, and the skin had been broken right here on my back, on my lower back. And so, to your question, I did go and get seen by a doctor. I was put on antibiotics for 10 days just to make sure, because at that point we didn't know, what the situation with the dog and the rabies may be. So I did the advice of the doctor to be on the medicine for the 10 days. So I think we've had further conversations.
So at that point, we, once Chris got bit, it was like, okay, I'm done texting. I'm done trying to work this out between Amber and myself. We called Animal Control the next day. I filled Anna in on everything. And then obviously contact was made to them, and that's when I had received some more texts from her, and they have always been apologetic. They've always been understanding that, yes, we shouldn't be afraid to walk in our own neighborhood. But we have only seen progression with this, and when someone gets bit, it automatically is a game changer, to the point where we have not walked in the last 2 months, because I will not continue to reassure my son that we are okay until I know for sure we are okay. And I mean, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I got an active son. We try to get out every, all day, because and we live in a very safe neighborhood, and so at this point, we're not walking on our street because we're not sure that it's safe. So, last thing that I wanted to say is, it's been, she noted about how wanting him to get used to the scooters, and it, previously stated it was because he was territorial, because we were new, he needed to get used to Clark, or my son who's 6, and then he ended up biting my husband who was not even near the scooter. So it's a moving target. There's really no reassurances at this point. So.
Okay, first, a little bit of housekeeping, just to make sure the documents you've provided are numbered 3 through 10, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and I assume that y'all would like those to be in evidence?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll deem these, we'll call this R1 for purposes of evidence for this hearing. And now, do any members of the board have questions for the Yarboroughs? Hearing none, do the Masseys have any questions for the Yarboroughs related to the information they've provided? Again, not an opportunity to make comments, but just to ask them questions.
I guess it's not a question.
Okay, then we'll wait until you have an opportunity to talk. Okay, so hearing none, thank y'all, we appreciate it. Now, are there any other complainants here? Okay. Before we get to you, another piece of housekeeping. Ms. Donaldson, is it correct that you've provided for the board's review exhibits A through G, dealing with the investigations, the classification of the potential dog, the appeal hearing notice, etc.?
That is correct.
Okay. I'd like to go ahead and introduce or admit that into evidence, and we'll call exhibits A through G R-2. Okay, and this time, sir.
I'm Nicholas Osborne. I reside at Gateway Drive, 270 Gateway Drive. We haven't lived
Okay,
there.
I'm sorry, 1 second. Let me swear you in. Did you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
All right, thank you. You may proceed.
What was your name again?
Nicholas Osborne.
Sizemore?
Yes, ma'am. We live at 270 Gateway Drive. We lived there maybe a year, and we haven't met any of the neighbors yet. This is an unfortunate event, so we like to walk our family down. We got a 9-year-old, 5-year-old, and a 4-year-old, all boys. And we got 2 friends that live on the other end of Brookside Drive. And as we were walking, we had a wagon pulling our 2 youngest boys, and my oldest boy was with us. And the dog come out of the Massey's, and I stood in between them, told my wife to stop. I said, we're not going to go any further. I said, slowly back up. I stood in between them, backing them up. The dog is territorial. Hair stood up, growling, barking, kept getting closer and closer, trying to circle around us. So I just told her to ease on back. She said, don't do nothing. I said, I'm not. I backed up, got in touch with the Yarboroughs because they found out about it through another neighbor, Megan, I believe. And she asked if we would come here today, and I said, yes. I don't want to see no dog put down. Dog owner, we have 3 dogs ourselves. I think Mr. Massey's children run up and down the road. Our dogs are outside, they don't bark at them, nothing like that. I just wanted to go walk in our neighborhood and see everybody. But if they could have me put in a fence in the backyard or something like that, that would suffice to me. I don't want to see no dog put down, but I see them as family, But that's all I have to say.
Okay. Any members of the board have questions? All right, hearing none. Masseys, do y'all have any questions?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other complainant here today? Okay, hearing none. Mr. and Mrs. Massey, y'all, it's not your opportunity. If y'all could first raise your right hands, and I'll swear you in at the same time. Do y'all swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
I apologize. I didn't know a lot of the details. Caitlin and I texted. I knew some of the stuff that was going on, but to stand here and listen to the details from what all is going on. My sister and Caitlin had talked about Ox before, about our dog, and I didn't know there were numerous situations then. She and I texted, I'm sure it's under documentation, October, I introduced myself, told her that was my dog. She had talked to my mother and my sister at that time, and I didn't know what all was going on. I guess in her notes, in February is when she said that they were walking and Ox approached her. At that time, we had ordered about $700. It was a GPS, Paw Patrol type fence system. We're on 8 acres total with my family, so we were trying to cover an area where he'd be able to run and stuff. It worked great. He scared to death of the beep. We thought it worked great, so he wouldn't go near it. So we just assumed it was working fine. And then Caitlin, I guess, numerous times later, it had only been like 2 times that she had been in contact. And then she said that the dog had come up the street again, so we adjusted the parameters of it. And with GPS, you just kind of have to monitor it. And unless something has agitated him, like we just didn't know. It hadn't gone in the front yard. When we're outside, he really doesn't go roam. He stays with us. The night that they were out, my husband was in the garage, and I guess between the 2 of them. So we weren't aware that there was many issues that there were. So communication between us was October. There was a text that I introduced myself to say Ox. And he is territorial on the street, and we asked him about it, and he had made the comment that, you know, that's what a dog's supposed to do, is take care of right in your property, and that's where the situations are, is right between, it's my sister's house, my house, and my parents' house. He's very territorial right there. He is spooked by things that are loud, wagons, scooters, coolers, so we figured that out. So when he came to visit, we worked with him on the leash. We did some behavior training classes to keep him closer to us. Everything that we read about dogs, we rescued him. And he had a hole in his head when we rescued him, and that was kind of the things that it walked us through. So we tried the GPS fence, and it didn't work. It either allowed him to go into the Smithwicks, which is across the street. We were trying to keep him off the street, or it would not allow him to come into our house. So that one didn't really work. So we just thought there weren't more issues. We didn't hear anything for 2 or so months. And then animal control, no, Sandra. Ms. Sandra contacted us and said that there was a bite report. And that was the first we had heard of it since, I think, March. So we thought everything was fine because he had been roaming. The neighbor's dogs come over, that he goes to the pond with my mom and my little nephew and stuff. So we just thought he had calmed down, there were no issues or anything. So we didn't hear anything until the May event. And then we purchased, that was on, I think the event happened on the 4th, which my husband was in the yard, had no idea, and the people across the street, the guy that was working on the fence wasn't aware that Mr. Earl was bit either. So it's not that we were ignoring it, we thought he went out there and he was barking like he usually does. He usually barks, he runs around in circles and stuff, he never stops. So he just goes around and the hair does stand up on the back of his head and is very intimidating. And then he usually just comes back, but he continues to bark until somebody comes outside. And that's kind of, you know, what we wanted to do, let him out where we do, but never to bite anybody. So as soon as she contacted us, the next day I ordered the wireless fence system from Tractor Supply Store, which goes around the perimeter. It said that it does 90 feet. I'm sorry, it says it does 180 feet. So we were assuming that would cover spacious area, but it actually does 90 feet perimeter. So that allowed him to go into the street and not reach the backyard area where there was shade and stuff. So 2 days later, we called Hidden Fence, what's in my notes? Dog Watch, Hidden Fences, and I guess Nancy said she was going to print everything off for y'all.
They did.
Okay. And we have some videos too to show you like how, besides in my front road, how friendly he is with everybody. But in the front of our house, he's just not. So what we did was we had the underground fence system put in from our garage back. We live on 8 acres with my family. And so it goes through our backyard, through my parents' backyard, through the side, into the back of the house. So he has no access to the front part of our house at Ridgely Road. And it's been installed since May 13th. And we have had him trained. We've done the training in addition with him for 2 months. We tested it with everything, with wagons with strollers, with neighbors, bringing their other dogs, every temptation that we possibly could do, and he will not cross it. He's crossed it the first day that they did the training, and he went outside and he wouldn't come back, and we had to pull him back inside. And once he got shocked, it's on the highest level, and he's a scared dog anyway, so we have no worries that he's gonna go into the front yard or anywhere else. So that's it. But I apologize, I didn't know all those details, and I'm sorry that we have our answer, I'm sorry.
I mean, I know we don't know what a dog's thinking. If one person gets bit, I think that's too many people. It's just surprising to me, as many people that walk and run down the street, and as many people that have been around him. You know, we don't have one situation where he bit somebody. And again, that's too many. That's one too many. But, you know, on our side, we've spent a lot of money to try to fix this thing. And we've got it fixed now with the dog watch. He hadn't been in the front yard since the thing was installed. And I wish the Yarbroughs would let me know that Mr. Yarbrough was bit that day. I went out there and got the box and took him back in the house. Had no idea he was bit. But, you know, now the Smithwick's dogs come over and come in the backyard to play with Fox and lay around him. And there's 2 more black labs across the street. Smithwick's have 2 black labs. But no, I mean, we're not here to say he didn't buy them or that, you know, but like I said, you know, I don't know what has made him this way in these sort of situations, because there's been a lot of other situations.
Before we get to questions, Ms. Massey, is it correct that you emailed today some documents to the county? I see here it's 1 through 12.
I did.
Okay. We'll go ahead and accept those into evidence, and we'll mark this as R-3 for the board's consideration. Do any members of the board have any questions with Massey's?
We have a minute to look at those.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I also have, one of the things that you'll see in there is I have Ox as a therapy dog. I have bad anxiety and I have social anxiety and severe depression. So he is, I have him for that as well.
He's trained and certified as that.
Oh, we've done through the behavioral therapy and cognitive online classes and stuff. He's just a very sensitive dog, so he reads attention and stuff. So I have to stay at home sometimes because of that. But we don't leave the property. He's been with us at the lake, and that's pretty much it. I don't go a lot of places without him.
Did you say this was a rescue dog? No, rescued him?
We did.
I have rescue dogs. I appreciate you rescuing dogs.
He's a sweet one.
But I can say this, I rescued a German Shepherd and I put an invisible fence, and it didn't work, because after when he went through it, he wouldn't come back through it. So I actually ended up having to go back and put an actual fence, and so that's where he is in the back of the yard. I'm not saying that's gonna happen there, but just be aware that there are some bigger sized dogs that can actually go through the fence, and then they get scared and don't come back in where they're supposed to be.
One of our things was that because of his behavior, because he is so timid, they have said that he is not one that is aggressive, like, to go out, like he is scared, like the dishwasher beeps or anything else, I mean, he's hiding from it. But if he were to go out, we don't think that's gonna be an issue, but where we would do whatever to make our neighbors safe and feel comfortable. And he's probably outside 10% of the time max.
Do y'all have any signage up?
We do.
Says beware of dog.
Well, we've got the fence we just had put in, their signage is out.
And is it just that there is a fence there, but there's
It says dog watch. It's like their official signage. And what we did have on our road for a year or so is dogs at play, because the dogs would just play in the street and stuff. And again, I mean, they just played until we found out recently that it was aggressive towards the purpose. So, but also are some support letters from all of our other neighbors that have kids and that have been around a long time, but they haven't had any issues with them. So we were very surprised. And so, I'm not gonna all.
And you've had no other accidents?
Ma'am?
You've had no other accidents? And since, ma'am?
No, I mean, he's 3, and all of these have happened in the past 6 months.
Have you all had an opportunity to review all the documents provided? Are there any other questions for the Masseys? Hearing none, thank you, I appreciate it. Y'all can sit down. So at this time, I'll close the public hearing. Before I turn it back over to the chairman, I'll remind the board that it can uphold the classification, it can modify the classification, or it can overrule, overturn the classification of this dog being a potentially dangerous dog. And also just wanted to remind you, to the extent that is upheld under section 562 of the county's ordinance, there are certain requirements for a potentially dangerous dog, and I'll just run through those briefly. It requires a certificate of registration, which includes a registration fee. It requires a distinctive collar. There must be postings on the premise. There's required notice if the owners move out of the county, as well as in a new county, they've got to provide notice. They also have to provide notice if the animal becomes loose or unconfined, donated, or relocated. And it also shall be unlawful for the owner of a potentially dangerous dog to permit the dog to be outside a proper enclosure unless the dog is restrained by a substantial chain or leash and is under the restraint of a responsible person. And if an individual doesn't abide by these requirements, the ordinance also provides the ability to confiscate the potentially dangerous dog. So with that, I'll turn the meeting back over to the chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions or any discussion?
What's a proper enclosure?
I was going to ask the same thing. Is this electric fence considered a proper enclosure?
A proper enclosure, you have to have a bottom and a top, and then a fence.
So kennel,
Like a 10 by 10 kennel with a top and a bottom on
and the dog has to be in that at all times?
it. Yes, ma'am, unless it's inside the house.
Can it be on leash at that point, after that?
Yeah, like they can walk the dog off leash as long as there is somebody responsible.
So the dog has to be on a leash if he's outside that kennel?
That is correct.
On a leash controlled by a human, or on a leash controlled by a dog runner?
Human.
Okay, any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I believe from the testimony that we've received that the dog does meet the definition of potentially dangerous dog. I appreciate the Massey's, all the things that you've done to try to protect the dog and keep the dog away from the neighbors. But as I read this definition, and I also appreciate your attitude toward this whole situation, but I'd just like to read the definition again out loud so that I can hear it for my own self too, and we can all hear it. A potentially dangerous dog means any dog with a known propensity. So we know that the dog has a propensity, tendency, or disposition to attack unprovoked, to cause injury, or to otherwise threaten persons or other domestic animals without provocation. Or any dog that, when unprovoked, inflicts bites on human being or other domestic animal upon public or private property, or chases or approaches a human being upon the street, sidewalk, or any public grounds in a vicious or terrorizing manner in an apparent attitude of attack. So I do believe that from what we've heard, this dog does meet that definition. I believe Ms. Massey said that the dog is only outside about 10% of the time. I think that's what she said. Is that what she said, Ms. Massey?
It's usually about 10%.
About 10% of the time.
But he's not on a leash, yes.
So 10% of the time, if we declared, if we uphold this, he would have to be in a kennel type. And that's not fun for a dog.
Can I ask you that? If you look at the fence, the fence that we have put up, it covers the property between us and my parents. So he spends his time, 10% of his time, is he goes from our house to my parents' house, to our garages and stuff, and then my nephew who lives next door. So it's all in the backyard, so he doesn't go into the front yard at all. So it's more of a family outside. But as for closing in the kennel, I mean, I wish we'd have our home visit, which we haven't had, so somebody could observe his behavior, or I have all the videos on jump drive, so you could see that we had an incident, but he's not the dog that needs to be caged in, because there haven't been any other situations. And he can't come into the front yard to bother anybody that's on the street, or people can come into our driveway and come to our front door, and the dog doesn't have access to it.
Do I get to speak to? I mean, is that?
I'm sorry.
You've heard enough, I think. I think I've heard enough, and so I will make the motion that we uphold that this is a potentially dangerous dog.
Okay, there's a motion to uphold the classification of the dog as potentially dangerous. Is there a second?
I'll second that. I mean, it was stated that, one bite was one too many, and I mean, it fits our definition of a potentially dangerous dog. I don't see how we can uphold it.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
The only discussion I have is that I understand what an enclosure is, secure side, secure top. I'm looking at this map they provided with the electric fence. There's, on all this land, they couldn't put a dog run out there and have their dog on a dog run that's on a leash. It has to be one of them on the leash holding the dog.
That is what it is.
That's basically what the,
Yeah, we might want to revisit that.
yeah, I think we need to take a look at that.
Well, we can change can we change modify? We can modify.
I have a question. Can I ask a question?
It's closed.
Yeah, it's not an opportunity for comment.
Are we able to? I agree we need to uphold this because one bite is one bite too many. But is there not a way that we can modify that and say that this dog could be put on since it is within the electric fence, it could be put on a dog run so that they're not having to hold the leash with the dog?
Right. It's, I'll be honest with you, it's a little unclear because the ordinance states that the classification, so at the hearing such other evidence and hear such other testimony is reasonably necessary to make a determination either to sustain, modify, or overrule the animal control officer's classification of the animal. So in other words, I read that to mean that you can modify in a way that instead of being a dangerous dog, you would modify it to be a potentially dangerous dog. Or here, you would modify it from a potentially dangerous dog to a dangerous dog. However, it doesn't appear to contemplate the ability to modify the requirements under the ordinance itself at this time.
So J2 says it shall be unlawful for the owner of a potentially dangerous dog to permit the dog to be outside a proper enclosure, which is defined in the top, secure size and top. And within a fence, all sides of the fence should be of height and bottom.
Right.
It seems to me that perhaps our definition is outdated because now fences don't have a height and a bottom. They're electronic and,
Well,
they're not, you know what I'm saying?
it just says the bottom has to be secured in a manner that prevents the dog from digging out. So if they have an 8-foot fence that the dog can't jump over, that's an enclosure.
Dogs escape from overboard from the
Right.
fence.
I agree. I think we can't do anything about it now, but we probably need to take a look at these and update this to be with whatever Georgia statutes are.
We talked about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that. There has been an update in the Georgia statute. I've gone through that change with other jurisdictions. We can certainly visit that here.
What are the changes specifically?
It's pretty detailed, but it goes through a process of defining a dangerous dog as well as a vicious dog. And
Does
So
it
much
change the
similar.
definition of enclosure?
That, I don't know off the top of my head. I can certainly provide that information for you, though.
But the decision today,
Is whether or not to uphold the classification.
That is correct, because y'all have an ordinance in place right now that doesn't provide for any special condition or amendments to those requirements. The decision today is to either uphold it as a potentially dangerous dog, modify it to a dangerous dog, or to overturn. But I will suggest to the board that to the extent that it's interested in amending its ordinance down the road, it could certainly then take a measure that would affect the Massey's too.
Oh, so we could retroactive it.
That's correct,
Yeah, okay.
because it would lessen, not restrict more.
I understand.
I mean, I don't want the dog to hurt another person, but I think enclosed on 8 acres in a top and side kennel type, I mean, it could be as big as they want it to be, of course, but the expense of that is a little restrictive.
But you also have to understand if people is within that 8 acres, there's multiple families. If somebody comes over and it's on a runner.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the dog now instead of people.
Right.
So, anyway, my motion stands.
okay, so we have a motion and a second to uphold the classification of the dog as potentially dangerous. All right, all those in favor?
I vote only in favor because it's what we have to do, but I disagree with the fence thing.
And Harry? Harry?
In favor.
In favor, okay, thank you, okay. Then the motion carries, for the classification of the dog as potentially dangerous. And if there is nothing else.
Well, I would like stated that if we revise these, that we can revisit this for, since they have 8 acres, it's pretty much fenced in with electric fence.
Yes, sir, I've put that in my notes that in looking at the changes in the state statute, we'll also consider loosening the proper enclosure definition as well as the requirements for the restraint, whether that has to be held by a person or not.
And two, you know, if we were talking a 2 acre lot, it maybe because of the size that I feel so, a 2 acre lot, I may think it ought to be enclosed and top on it, but 8 acres, I don't know, I feel that way.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anything else? Mr. Jury, thank you.
I have a question just for clarification. Can I just ask a question for clarification?
Well, we're through, y'all.
We have a few minutes.
A letter will be sent
Thank you.
Oh,
stating what they have to do, and you'll get a copy of it.
Oh, thank you.